Hello everyone, today we will be revising the following topics of the chapter Molecular Basis of Inheritance. So let's get started. After the proposition of a double helix structure for DNA, very soon Francis Crick proposed the central dogma, which states that the genetic information flows from the DNA to RNA and RNA to protein, and it involves three processes. Number one is replication, that is the doubling of DNA. Second is transcription, which is copying of genetic information from one strand of the DNA into RNA. And third is translation, that refers to the process of polymerization of amino acids to form a polypeptide chain, means proteins, by the sequences of the bases which are present on mRNA. However, in some viruses, the flow of information is in reverse direction. That's why it is known as reverse transcription. And the viruses are known as retroviruses. Okay, so before moving to the next topic, packaging of DNA helix, let's calculate the length of DNA double helix in a mammalian cell. And we can calculate it simply by multiplying the total number of base pair with the distance between the two consecutive base pair. And this length comes out to be approximately 2.2 meters. So now question is, how is such a long polymer packaged in a cell? So let's talk about the packaging of DNA helix in prokaryotes as well as in eukaryotes. First, we will understand the word supercoiling. The packing of DNA involves an extraordinary degree of structural organization which has been divided into three hierarchical levels: primary, secondary and tertiary levels. Primary structure is a simple polynucleotide chain. Secondary structure or relaxed DNA is the spirally coiled double helical molecule, and to achieve the tertiary structure, each DNA helix undergoes repeated twisting, folding and coiling, and all this packaging is called as its supercoiling. So when we are talking about the packaging of DNA helix, we must know the word supercoiling. Let's talk about in prokaryotes first. In prokaryotes such as E. coli, though they do not have a defined nucleus, DNA is not scattered throughout the cell. DNA, being negatively charged, is held with structural proteins and enzymes in a particular region termed as nucleoid. These proteins and enzymes, they are not permanently complexed with the DNA, and this type of supercoiling is known as planktonemic supercoiling. Now let's talk about in eukaryotes. Supercoiling in eukaryotes is complex and is called solenoidal. This supercoiling occurs in three grading steps, which we will talk in the next slide, with the help of certain proteins, histone and non-histone proteins, which are permanently complexed with the DNA to form a nucleoprotein complex that is known as chromatin. So chromatin is made with the nucleic acid and proteins. Here histone proteins, they are positively charged, and basic proteins, they are rich in the basic amino acid residues like glycine and arginine with the positively charged side chains. Histones are organized to form histone octamer, which consists of two copies of each of the four core histone proteins: H2A, H2B, H3 and H4. That's why it is known as octamer. Oct means 8, mer means units. And the negatively charged DNA is wrapped around the positively charged histone octamer to form a structure called nucleosome. A typical nucleosome contains 200 base pairs of DNA helix. The packaging of chromatin at higher levels requires additional set of proteins that are collectively referred to as non-histone chromosomal proteins. They are heterogenic, mostly negatively charged, means acidic, and enzymatic or regulatory in function. So now let's see how supercoiling occurs in three grading steps, or you can say levels of chromatin organization. So first level of chromatin organization, as we know that nucleosomes are separated from each other by short unwound segments of DNA helix called linkers or spacers. So in this level, twisting of linkers causes a close stacking of nucleosomes upon each other, creating a beads on string chromatin fiber of 10 nanometer diameter. This process involves 7-fold packaging of DNA helix. In the second level of chromatin organization, a 10 nanometer chromatin fiber undergoes twisting and coiling in the fashion of a solenoid, or you can say cylindrical coil, having 6 nucleosomes per turn. The resultant fiber is of 30 nanometer diameter. It involves 40-fold packaging of DNA helix. And in the last and third level of chromatin organization, the solenoid is thrown into radial loops which occur in clusters at short intervals and are called as chromomeres. As a result of this looping, a DNA helix is finally packaged about 5,000 to 10,000 fold, and the resultant fiber is called a chromosome, which is visible under the microscopes only in dividing cells. It's important to note that in a typical nucleus, some region of the chromatin they are loosely packed and stains light and are referred to as euchromatin, and the chromatin that is more densely packed and stains dark are called as heterochromatin. Euchromatin is said to be transcriptionally active chromatin, whereas heterochromatin is inactive. Okay, so this is all about the packaging of DNA helix. Now, if you remember, in the last video we discussed that many discoveries by many scientists narrowed the search for the genetic material to the chromosomes located in the nucleus of most cells. But the question remained the same, that what molecule was actually the genetic material, and in this sequence transforming principle was given by Frederick Griffith in 1928. And while experimenting with the Streptococcus pneumoniae bacterium that is responsible for pneumonia, he witnessed a transformation in the bacteria. That means that bacteria had changed in physical form. When Streptococcus pneumoniae bacteria are grown on a culture plate, some produce smooth shiny colonies while others produce rough colonies. This is because the S strain bacteria have a mucus polysaccharide coat while R strain doesn't. Now let's talk about the experiment what Griffith did. In his experiment, when the mice infected with S strain or virulent form, they died from pneumonia. But mice infected with R strain or heat killed S strain, the mice lived and do not develop pneumonia. And when he injected a mixture of heat killed S and live R bacteria, the mice died. Moreover, he recovered living S bacteria from the dead mice. So he concluded that the R strain bacteria had somehow been transformed by the heat killed S strain bacteria, and some transforming principle transferred from the heat killed S strain and enabled R strain to synthesize a smooth polysaccharide coat and become virulent. Definitely this must be due to the transfer of genetic material. But in this experiment, Griffith couldn't provide the biochemical nature of the genetic material. It was done by Avery, McLeod and McCarty between 1933 to 44. They purified biochemicals like proteins, DNA and RNA from the heat-killed S cells to see which ones could transform live R cells into S cells. They discovered that proteases, means protein digesting enzymes, RNAs, RNA digesting enzymes, didn't affect transformation. So the transforming substance was not a protein or RNA, but digestion with DNAs did inhibit transformation, and this suggests that the DNA caused the transformation. They concluded that DNA is the hereditary material. This is all for today's video. To get the notification of other videos, do subscribe this channel. Thank you.